Paul Martin. I'll do a bit of background. I'm going to be talking about investment readiness. The background of this is my primary employer is Kabin, which is a social enterprise advisory organisation. So there's three of us in Cornwall that are accredited social enterprise advisors, and we got into this back in conversations in 2006, and then in earnest in 2007 we started working with Community Energy Plus, and the whole kind of idea was, with our background in community enterprise and their background in community energy, we'd be able to work together to help communities who wanted to have community-owned renewables. A lot of our clients on the ground were trying to do projects, all driven by different things. Some of them it was about climate change, some of them it was about local money flows, some of them it was about energy security or energy efficiency, behavioural change, attitudinal change, demand reduction, whatever. But what a lot of them had in common is wanting to have income streams from renewables to enable them to meet those aspirations. So, so one of the first things we did, our work was, actually we were inspired by South Wheatley Environmental Trust as well, which Bill Andrews is from. They were the sort of first group in Cornwall that set up a not-for-profit organisation and owned a wind turbine, and then used that income for meeting aspirations within their community. So we then, I think they set that up in 2005, wasn't it? And then, so we were sort of inspired by that, and then also inspired by sort of what was going on in Germany and Denmark, where there's a hell of a lot of community ownership. So what we wanted to do was enable that, and we did the work in the last 3 years of the, back when there was a strategic partnership and a local area agreement, and evidence-based policy making and things like that. Basically, Cornwall had won some performance reward grant money for exceeding its NI 186 and 187, which I think is per capita carbon reduction and fuel poverty reduction. We were going to try and apply that performance reward grant to sort of help the communities meet their aspirations and around community-owned renewables. And we realised that one of the barriers, there's many barriers, but one of the barriers was finance, so we wanted to set up a revolving fund that could make loans to enable some of this stuff to happen. And we wanted these loans to be assessed through peer review, and that learning had come from successful credit unions, successful community development finance institutions, and the microfinance movement, like Grameen Bank, Nobel award-winning Eunice, and all that kind of work. And what those organisations had in common was peer review lending. So the person assessing your loans your loan application wasn't a bank manager, it was a group of your peers. And those organisations that do peer review lending have the lowest level of loan default and actually create financially sustainable organisations. So what I'm actually trying to talk about now is, that was just a bit of background, what I'm trying to talk about now is investment readiness, and it's quite boring and it's not exciting, and behind every flashy facade sits a dull, competent drone. Sometimes there's a whole row of facades and drones, various levels of competence. So what we're going to try and do is try and demystify finance, have a look at investment readiness. And so this isn't all just about the finance, obviously, there's all these other aspects that are relevant to it. If someone's going to be investment ready, one of the first things you're going to do is look at their team and, can we actually invest in these people? Also, are they actually, is the community involved? Is that if they're saying to me, I want to borrow money because this is community owned and led, I'm going to want to know what level of community engagement there is, what level of democracy, is there open membership? So they can't be just passing themselves off as community owned and led, they have to genuinely be community owned and led. There's a whole load of other aspects to this that we're not going to talk about. So I'm just going to skip over that, but as I say, there's loads of different platforms that help people raise finance. There's loads of different stages of finance, there's loads of different types of finance. There's tax breaks, there's raising money through share offers, there's raising money through debt, there's raising money through equity, there's various quasi-equity, there's a whole load of different aspects to finance, but I'm going to try and skip over that. Here we are, different levels of, so here we have the sort of 30k, for a small project maybe this could be the getting your planning permission and getting your option agreement, and then there's the bigger picture, maybe construction finance. actually this is an example of quite a small scale, not at the megawatt scale. So yeah, somebody might think, oh yeah, great, my project is solvent, meaning that they can that their assets exceed their liabilities. They might see that they're profitable and that their operation, makes more money than it's costing to do. But they might not be liquid because all their income might come in one part of the year and all their expenses might come in another part of the year and they can't pay their bills. If that's the case, they're going to go bust, which is why a lot of accountants say cash is king. So, whatever your dream is as a community, if you're going to raise finance, it's probably useful to understand the difference between being solvent, being liquid and being profitable. So this is some of the, if someone comes to us, they might prepare their end of year accounts, but we want to know they have a good bookkeeping system in place. So, actually, I should actually say, the Low Carbon Society, what it's actually doing right now is it's running a revolving loan fund. It has 1.5 million in management, 1.3 million of that is from the Green Cornwall programme. And as Steve said, these are loans that we're making to community-owned energy organisations. Back in 2010, it made its first loan of 180,000, and then basically it was meant to have been started with £500,000, and it got pickled just before the comprehensive spending review. Money was took away by Eric Pickles, so we ended up starting a financial institution with 180k, which you can't really do. So you can't make a sustainable financial institution out of 180k. So thankfully, the Green Cornwall programme have recapitalised the fund through a loan facility agreement. So what happens now is the Low Carbon Society borrows money from the council and then makes loans to energy co-ops or community-owned energy organisations, not necessarily co-ops, but it has to be open, it has to be community-owned and led, and it has to be meeting the Green Cornwall criteria. So, but I'm not just talking about our criteria for investment readiness, I'm trying to talk about investment readiness more generally. So if we consider you investment ready, there's a chance that other lenders might consider you investment ready, and more importantly, your community. I mean, so if I was borrowing money from an anonymous bank manager, I might not feel so upset if I defaulted on the loan. Yeah? But if I was borrowing from my community, or if I was getting equity investment from my community, and I had to walk down the street where I live, and couldn't walk into the pub, knowing we defaulted and these people had lost their investment. So I would say you have to have probably a higher level of due diligence if you're going to raise money through your immediate community, because you couldn't live with the shame if you messed up. So we're talking about investment readiness in its wider sense, not just in terms of borrowing from the Low Carbon Society. We have there's 16 industrial employment societies set up in Cornwall right now, at various levels of capacity, various levels of volunteer burnout, all got different aspirations. But we know that just in the last few weeks, we've had a handful of them come to us, not with my Low Carbon Society hat on, but with my corporate development hat on, because they're coming to the time they have to get their year-end accounts in. And what's become apparent is a lot of these guys haven't got very good bookkeeping systems, because in the level of time available to help them, so when these organisations are started, we can help them through the Culture of Enterprise Hub, and that allows 2 days of support. In 2 days of support, you can barely scratch the surface of business planning and barely scratch getting them the right legal structure. So a lot of these organisations are barely set up, and then they're trying to run organisations that are quite difficult organisations to run. So, first, bookkeeping. The basics of just recording the money coming in and the money coming out. I'm going to skip over a lot of this because I don't want to bore you endlessly with bookkeeping. But the important thing is that people get the difference between keeping their books, having a record of income and expenditure, and how that is different to a profit and loss account, and how a profit and loss account is a totally different thing to a cash flow forecast, and how that is a separate thing to a balance sheet. So if you are going to raise finance, you need someone in your organisation who knows what a cash flow is, who knows what a balance sheet is. If you haven't got it in your organisation, find it. Find someone. or send someone on course, or do something, because if you don't know what those things are, no one's going to lend you any money. Equally, management accounts. You don't want to, you don't want to get to the year end and go, oh, I've got to try and find my accounts and go through your bank statements and get your accounts in. Because if that's how you're doing your bookkeeping, when it comes to talking to an investor, you're not going to be able to, a few minutes' notice come up with management accounts. And that's what an investor is going to want to see. They want to know that you've always got a handle on where you are with your money. So there's an example of management accounts. Profit. Quite like this. Profit, like sausages, are esteemed most by those who know least what goes into them. So just because you might be setting up a not-for-profit social enterprise doesn't mean you don't need profit. You're just not making profit for private investors. So anyway, we're not going to dwell on this too much. Business plan. Now, the business plan. So I'll give an example of a pub. We're working with a community-owned pub at the moment, and I actually think of this in stages. We have pre-start, we have new starts, and then we have existing organisations. And somewhere in there is investment readiness. I think of investment readiness as a stage you go through when you're about to try and raise finance. It could be at the beginning, it could be for early growth, it could be for a new project. But so I'll give the example of this new organisation that's trying to take over a pub. The last pub in their community is about to shut down. We did some work with them. We helped them get their correct legal structure. This is with the Kabin hat on, not with the Low Carbon Society hat on. But we helped them get their legal structure in place. We did some work with them on governance, so they know how they're making decisions. We helped them do their first draft business plan, and that included the first draft of the cash flow forecast. And we helped them do their first draft of their share offer document. All of that stuff I don't even think of as investment readiness. That's just getting a viable organisation. Once they had their first draft of their share offer document and their first draft of their business plan, then they kind of stepped over the line into investment readiness. And that's when they started, that's when I was saying to them, right, you need to talk to people who might underwrite your share offer. You need to talk to people who you're hoping might invest. You need to talk to banks that you might want to borrow money off. The people who often underwrite share offers go through quite a good due diligence process. When Community Power Cornwall did its share offer, there was a private investor, and he was like, right, we want to see an EBITDA analysis. We wanted to see earnings before income tax, depreciation and amortisation. That's a tool that investors often use to compare various different enterprises that might be in various different sectors. So it helps them compare different things. So once they'd done the actual setting up a viable enterprise, then they got into investment readiness. And then they would do things like stress testing their cash flow projections. So, turning all the income down to a worst case scenario, turning all the expenditure up, finding where the model broke. And that's really important, that you rigorously test and be as pessimistic as possible. So yeah, business plans. So business plan is the sort of stage before investment readiness. Oh, what's this? This might actually, hopefully this is silent. It is silent, that's good. So, I'm going to try not to bore you too much, but just give you an example of the 18, this is a video of the Community Power Cornwall's, it's only a minute, so don't worry, it won't go on and on. But whilst that's on, I'll do this really boring list of the things that the Low Carbon Society assesses when it's doing due diligence on a loan application. So to give you a kind of idea, there's 18 different criteria that we look at, and each of these have got sub-headings within it. I'm not going to go into the sub-headings, but so for instance, if someone applies to a loan, we want to look at whether they've got an option, an inclusive option on the land, or whether they've got a lease on the land, or whether it's a roof, or whether it's a turbine, or whatever the technology is. We don't care what the technology is, but what we care is that you meet with the Green Cornwall criteria, that we can secure the loan and that you can pay the loan back. But there needs to be an option and a lease. You need to have planning permission, or it needs to be permitted development. We'll look at the loan to value ratio, we'll look at the equity debt ratio, we'll look at the loan weighting. We'll expect you to do stress testing and a sensitivity analysis. We want to know that there's a good business plan. We want to know that the applicant has done forecast profit and loss statements. So not just done a cash flow forecast, but they've also done projected balance sheet and projected P&L. We want to look at the organisational governance. We're going to scrutinise the borrower, look at their legal forms, how they're registered, their creditworthiness, their capacity as an organisation. And there's a whole list of sub things in there to look at. Oh, that's it. That's good. We want to know the warranties. So if you're saying we're going to borrow to put up this particular piece of machinery, we want to know that the warranties are good from the manufacturer, which means we might have to do some due diligence on the manufacturer. It's all well and good that they've given you a warranty, but what if they can't? What if they haven't got the financial clout to stand behind their warranty? We will look at the life expectancy of the technology. We want to know you've got good insurance in place. We want to know you've done a good resource assessment of whether it's wind or heat or solar or whatever. And we want to look at the estimates you've used to come to your income. We want to know about valuation. It might not necessarily mean that we need a surveyor to do a Red Book valuation or Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors valuation. It could be that we do a net present value calculation ourselves if it's a low, so it's quite a small thing. We want to know we can get security in place. We want to know that the borrower has equal opportunities and disability policies and health and safety policies. There might be additional criteria, and we want to know that you've done an inequality impact assessment. So that's 18 sort of things that we'll look at. And that's just us. I mean, RAP might have other criteria. The Pure guys at Pure Clean Planet Trust is now merged with Leapfrog. They might have a different set of criteria. If you want to go on the Abundance platform, they might have a different set of criteria. But broadly, investors will look at most of these aspects before they lend you any money, or before someone puts an equity investment in. Yeah, I'll just flick through all these because a lot of these are sort of the headlines of the things I've just listed. How am I doing for time?
2.5 minutes.
Is that, have I been talking for 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, so that means 20 minutes talking, 10 minutes for Q&A.
Yeah, we've got 5 minutes.
Alright. So this basically, you have to meet the Green Cornwall criteria. That can be found on the Green Cornwall's website, so I won't read it all out. This is the list I just spoke about a minute ago. The reason I have a photo of your local community here is emphasising that point of, to be truly investment ready, like I said, you should be able to walk down your high street, to your local pub, and meet your neighbours, knowing that if they've bought shares, you know. So that's the ultimate test of investment readiness. Would you happily lend to your mum, for your mum? So imagine the loan's been approved. So the sort of loans we offer typically, we can do bridging loans, we can do short-term loans. If we lend 100%, we'd want you within a short period of time to swap some of that out for equity. So ideally, we don't want to be the sole lender. Ideally, our ideal situation is that we're only lending 70% of the capital expenditure. Here's a few tips. Just be rigorous. Everything you've done in your business plan, be as pessimistic as possible. Every assumption you've made, test it. We can provide you all the sort of stuff outside this. So here's a few more tips. And again, it's all about being pessimistic and checking everything you've said and looking at it from the most. Don't be a friend of yourself. When you're doing these plans, be your own enemy and really scrutinise everything you're assuming. So yeah, that's it. Any questions?